Hello and welcome to Drawing Blood. Hashtag Drawing Blood. It's an inside look at our game Hashtag Blood, which is a top-down adventure. Very much a love letter to Zelda, the Cartoon Network era around 2000s and up, and a whole bunch of other references that you guys will have to buy the game to check out. I'm Chris Burns, your host. Joining with me also is Bob Fox to my right. And abroad, we got Andrew Tavis, Cody Greenhalgh, and Greg Lane, two programmers and the writer for our video game here. So if you have any of those kind of questions, you hit them up and they'll hit you back on the stream. I'm glad to see Joe Whimsy's here too. She was one of the early fans of this stream that we did about 3 years ago. So it's always nice to get back to it. Finally, I've been waiting on these live streams to continue. Yeah, I missed the last few because I didn't realize. Yes, it's been a very long time. We've been busy working on the game, though. Part-time, but now full-time. Alright, so I'm going to just do a little recap of what we did last week because it's a little different than this week. And I'm just going to show in case anyone missed last week's stream. And it wasn't sprite work, we did animatic work.
McDuders didn't know we used Flash MX.
Oh, Flash MX. Yes, that's you're gonna see on my screen that it's a very old kind of interface, and that's Flash MX, which someone told us last week was 2002 or 2003 or 4, one of them. Very early, 20 years old though, still works. Okay, so I'm just gonna show this animatic that we comprised of last week, and well, I'll show it, and then if anyone has any questions, it's about getting caught by a mall cop. Play now. So animatics are not, for those who don't know animation lingo, is pretty much a moving storyboard, usually paced out to the right time, and that's when you start adding in sound effects and kind of roughing out the timing of the animation. It's a step further from thumbnails or storyboards. We color them because these get input right into the game to just generalize timing and get the story flowing and stuff. And I like it to look a little more kind of polished than what we would usually do with these animatics, which would be black and white. And you can see how I set it up here. We got the field guide, the bars, and then just very basic layers and pretty rough drawings here. One more time, and then we're going to go into sprite work. Excuse me, sir.
I was asking who was the creative director.
Well, we have 5 people on the team. We're all owner of Exit 73 Games. So all 5 of us are pretty much our own bosses a little bit. Bob and myself usually handle the art side of things. So art direction wise, it'll be Bob, myself. Programming and writing and all the other stuff would be under, programming would be Andrew Tavis and Cody Greenhalgh. They're the programmers. And the writing and kind of narrative direction would be Greg Lane. So we all kind of have our different parts. And it's not to say that we don't have a say in the narrative or what we think the game should play, and they don't, and they have say on what the characters can look like too. We just sort of each specialize in our field that we kind of came up in. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And so I'm going to close that. That's what we did last week. Don't need to save. All right. This is an example of the sprite sheet. So I'm going to play this. This is a guy I started this morning. We're kind of making a new villain, and we're trying... Becky gets certain tools throughout her adventure, and we're kind of trying to use them in not just like a pragmatic sense. She has a shovel where she can dig, but we also want to use it to fight bad guys. So every kind of tool you get will have hopefully a bad guy that in conjunction that can get hurt by that tool. So I just started this morning, and that's why you can see the upper right big guy here. There's some rough drawings in there, and it's timed out a little wonky. And at the end of everything, when I'm done with the sprite sheet, it usually looks something a little more akin to this, where you can see I kind of labeled each of these sprites, and I'm just going to play this. And I picked the gargoyle because they're just front-facing enemies. Like, I don't change the angle of this guy. Whereas the other enemies sort of that land on their feet, we do a pretty much a full rotation of all the sprite work, which is very cumbersome. You get a little more leeway with the flying guys for some reason, because it always looks like they're chasing Becky. So, and this is one of the gargoyles, and they can come to life and go back to the statue form. That's just all that sprite work. So when it's all finished, this, I forget what we even call this guy. I'm calling him a dirt pyre right now because he's coming out of the dirt. A dirt devil is another one. If they could sue us though. But they'll pretty much be front facing for the time being anyway, and the sprite sheet at the end will end up looking closer to something of that. I'm making my own video game. I'm the artist, storyteller, and character designer for mine, and I want to learn how to grow beyond little ideas in a notebook. Well, we started this pretty much the same way you did. We just had an idea, and we just kind of ran with it. You know, you work on something long enough, and you kind of post stuff here and there, and hopefully you get enough attention that, you know, you can open up some opportunities for you to make the video game, and that's the situation we're in right now. So, you know, this started pretty much 4 or 5 years ago, and even before that, when it wasn't a video game idea. And we just liked the idea so much that we just kept doing it for free until, you know, now we're getting ready to make it. Okay, so the premise of this guy is he starts in the ground, so it's gonna just start as this little pile of dirt to the left here. And I set up, like I do all my characters, in an idle state. Meaning this will just be the dirt kind of floating up and down. Or not floating, just moving on the ground here. And you can see up here, if you're looking at layer 2, this is the chart I would like. And it's, people familiar with animation, kind of, it's like that rubber hose chart that they did in the 30s, where it's just a little bit of an ease in and ease out, like always like having a little bit of pulse or livelihood, or it feels alive going up and down. It's just a really kind of ease in, ease out, like loop back. Now I can in between this and show you guys, but that's not very compelling stuff right here, so I'm gonna jump ahead to the more kind of this sprite is the attack, where if he gets close enough he'll open up and try to grab Becky. And this has everything, a lot of the stuff that we use in other sprites, where we have like an antic here, and he overshoots, settles, antic, grab in this case, then another antic and down. And every attack will always kind of lead back into the idle state here, so we try to get a smooth transition. And when I say we use sort of every kind of method here, I'm going to do that stagger that I mentioned in the first episode, or 2 weeks ago. I didn't really show a good example of like when you grab and settle. So this is such a kind of a broad, big move. This guy kind of trying to bear hug Becky. That I'm going to do what we call the stagger, or when I used to work at a different studio when I was working on a different show called Super Jail, we called this sort of animation technique the Jared stagger. And anyone familiar with Super Jail knows that Jared in it was the little kind of nervous sort of bookkeeper that the warden used. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this torso a symbol. I'm going to call it DV. That's for dirt vampire, now dirt devil or whatever. So I'm going to do DV attack 01 torso, and I'll call it stagger. That's so I can find it in the library. So I'm going to hit it on frame 6, and then I'm going to grab the same frame and bring it up here, because they're all gonna settle into this one pose. Okay, when will the game be available? Okay, you drew that, and Drew Bits. Okay, yeah, Bob will put all the information and the pedigree stuff. But Drew Bits, that's Andrew, one of our programmers. He's hard at work, but I'm glad he's on to answer any of these questions. What is the game? I'm literally buying this game out of pure respect. I will take any way you buy it. Even if you don't like us, buy it out of spite. Um. Okay, so to get the stagger right, we have to kind of know what the antic is. So this guy, he jumps out like that, right? And then he kind of closes in. And when he closes in, you're going to overshoot the arms, right? Because you want to settle to this part. So he's going to go like that. So we're going to overshoot this one right here. So we're going to take a pose where it overshoots. And it's like cross-armed here. So we're going to have the chest go down still, like the chest will go down this way, this arm will overshoot that way. Sometimes arrows help. This arm will overshoot that way because they're all coming in from that. The head's coming down here, so everything's kind of compacting a lot here. So with that in mind, I'll just start roughing something out. So the shoulder moves up, or down rather. The claw will kind of bend at the wrist a little bit more. Forearm bending, bicep. That's a little dirt dot right there. And this, you're always, when you're doing animation, you always want to draw through, because if you just kind of cut corners here, you might not connect, and then the joints look off. Always a little bit of a wonky drawing when you try to cut corners that way. Alright. So I got that rough in mind. Just kind of eyeball it here. That feels good, and that's down. I might even lower it a little bit more, because his head's shooting down so hard. Okay, so I'm going to clean that one up real quick. Those familiar with the 3-year-old series, I'm still using the same exact line weight, which is at 400. That's the zoom in level, right? So it's pretty close up. Gonna have the pressure sensitivity on. And go to the second to last brush. That gives it this really kind of thick, chunky line, but I have a lot more control over it, rather than when you use like a thinner one. And maybe it's psychological or not, but I have a harder time with the thinner stuff, especially when you're in betweening, and I find myself pressing a lot harder. So to save myself some time and anguish, I zoom in this far, and then you can afford some mistakes when you're this far out, because you're not going to see any of this in the game this close up. So let's start here. And I'll be using the spacebar a lot to kind of go all around. I'm going to have the finger come up here. They got these like kind of gnarly claws that we give all the vampires in our game. And Bud, just let me know if there's any questions. Yeah, I mean, I think in any... Bob just said, did we hit any roadblocks making this game? I think in any production, whether it be animation, probably music, or any kind of art, you'll find certain roadblocks. Yeah, this has been such an organic kind of production where we make something in the game, and then we're like, how do we apply that? And so there's a lot of like back and forth and stuff. But the normal roadblocks are like, there's just not enough time in the day to finish the animation we need, or there's bugs in the programming that come with the turf. But yeah, I think any production will have their fair share of kind of roadblocks. This, nothing that was disheartening really. It just comes with the turf. I feel like we didn't break the game at any point like that or anything, so. But we've also been kind of chipping away at it before we worked full-time on it for like 2.5 years, so we got a lot of the like kind of legwork out of the way, of like the creative legwork of like, what's this gonna look like? How will this play? We had all that kind of set in stone. Okay, so I got the overshoot here. Goes like that. And that looks good. Now on this one, we're going to do the opposite. Since this is the overshoot, we're going to undershoot this one. Because when we stagger it, we're going to flip the frames around and stuff, so it really feels like this kind of like really impactful kind of move here. So I'm going to rough that out, and you just do the opposite. So remember the arms were coming this way. So we overshot in the last one. We're going to undershoot here. So we're going to lift up the back, bend the opposite direction. This arm does the same thing. This sleeveless kind of t-shirt here, been hanging out in the dirt with. The shadow goes up. If I'm happy with this, I can rough that out. I mean, I can clean this up. So I'm going to do that now. When I have the roughs on, I always try to keep the cleaned up version right next to it so I can have some context too. Same kind of claws. Gonna start with the back here. And a lot of these settles, I won't have to rough out every frame. If you get close enough to the line and you kind of at this zoom level, you can kind of get a sense of like what the line will be for the next drawing. So you won't have to rough this out really necessarily at least every frame, because there will be 4 in-betweens between this and the final one. And that's what we're going to work on next. Alright. There. Got a little bit of space there. Okay, that goes down. And I have this little undershadow here. You can just fill in with black. Okay. So you can see undershoot, layer 1, layer 2, overshoot. You can see them together. I do that onion skin thing so you can see the difference, and then you can kind of see the in-between of that should technically be this final pose here. I'm just going to start with the top. I like, for whatever reason, I do the overshoots first. I find them a little, it's just something I've always been doing, so I'm trying to get that rhythm. I spent all day binge watching the most important videos. I was for the longest time. Wanted to make a video game stuff. Yeah, I've been. You know, when we started this studio, and I'm talking about the animation studio, not the video game studio. It was never really a thought that Bob and myself could make a video game. It just seemed a little too far out of reach, and then. You know, we knew Cody for a while. We actually all lived together back in, you know, post-college days. And he was always a video game programmer. And our paths or careers never really crossed paths. So it was never really an intention to, or I always liked video games. I just never thought I'd get to work on one. And, it kind of dawned on us one day, it's like, wait, we technically have every one we need to make something like that. So Cody looked through all our old pitch packets that got discarded or no one really wanted anything to do with. He stumbled upon #Blood, which at first was, you know, a pitch for a series. And it was always a kind of a teenage vampire hunter kind of thing, so I was like, that does sound like a video game, why don't we just try to make that? And then we were kind of all to the races from there, though we did struggle with the design of it for a little bit, because we were still under the mindset it's like video games have to look like a video game. Like we were really kind of stuck on that plateau for a while, and then we just started sketching stuff out, and some of it we just didn't like. It wasn't really working, and then we just sort of sketched it out as if we would make the series. And then something clicked. I was like, oh yeah, we could just do what we want. We could make any sprite we want. There's no limitations for that. So that's sort of how it was born. The first drawing of like the like what we thought it should look like, or the game itself, or the short itself.
No, the game. When we thought what the game.
Cody, yeah, it was really bad. It was like no holding lines. I don't know. Do you know where that might be, Bob? Yeah, but let Bob find it, because if I go rummaging through the work area, and then he'll send it to me. We could show you the first short we did for it too, which that's on YouTube. I'd kind of mark the shoulder here. What's that?
Cody said he thinks he knows where it is.
Oh, Cody, yeah. When Cody and I went to Spain to kind of promote Blood at one point, we were invited to go. I think we had some of the initial artwork. It's one of those things I just don't even like looking at. It was so amateurish. I hate looking at old work. But it is kind of a nice to see how far we came with it. Alright, so you see I didn't even rough the last one out while I was chit-chatting away. So this is going to be even a little easier than the last one. Less line work. Or guesswork. Same amount of line work. Yeah, the short we made, which was really just sort of a teaser trailer of what it could be. Look at the bicep line. That style, that's not too far off from what we are now. We made it monochrome because when we were making the short, we just wanted it super stylized. My desire to change the gaming industry and really to inspire me is really fun. All right. I'm gonna clean this one up a little bit. Did Cody find it?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, is he look? Or,
He just might not.
oh, okay. Oh, is he not on?
I don't know how you would send it to get it to you would be.
Oh yeah, he could tell you, and yeah. Even like our demo and stuff, we changed Becky's design a little bit from the demo to what we are now. Not terribly, but no. And Tin Hart, the guy showing up on the YouTube channel right now, that's our writer, Greg Lane. Did I hear church bell? You might have. We're right you'll hear a lot of stuff outside our windows though. Oh, yes. The music has a church bell in it. Yeah, we also live our work pretty close to a pretty loud church bell here. Not the loudest thing outside though. You'll hear sirens soon, I'm sure. What enemy is Dragor? He's the kind of the heavy. He's the big boss at the end and throughout the game. I can't give too much away there. Yeah, we're all, we work abroad. Someone asked we're all here in the chat. Yeah, everyone works in different states other than Bob and myself. So we're all in the same time zone, thankfully. But we all kind of sit and chat on meetings all day. So, no different here. Alright. one more after this, and then we do the undershoot. Then I'll show you the stagger, how you could do that real quickly. And then I had to do this in conjunction with the head. I separated the head on this one. I could show you a kind of a close-up of what this guy looks like too. I didn't really do that. So line 19, and I look forward to doing this. Yeah, no, that's, you know, I got interested in animation itself when I was around 16 or 17. Now, this was in, you know, mid-90s. So it was last century, actually. And I kind of always liked drawing. I was big into comic books. I did like cartoons and stuff, but it was a lot like this. I was like, I wasn't sure how I could break into animation, so I kind of stayed around stuff I knew, like comic books. I would like draw panels and all that stuff. And I went to Blockbuster. This is gonna really date me. With my buddy Evan when I was around 16. This pre-internet, or the internet, we didn't have it. And we were looking at something to rent, and Blockbuster just had, like, you know, the back of the VHSs. It's all sounds so old right now. And we picked up this cartoon that people might be familiar with now, but it was called Ninja Scroll. Now, growing up out here on Long Island, I'd never really heard of anime or any of that stuff. I was just kind of familiar with like Looney Tunes and like kids cartoons. So when I saw the back of this, I was like, oh, this is kind of intriguing. And we played it, and of course it was awesome. I mean, especially for 16-year-old Chris. I was like, this is amazing. I can't believe someone drew this. It's like, it's for adults. And again, it kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh yeah, you can sort of draw whatever you want and make a story of however you see fit. So it kind of opened up to my eyes, and I was like, okay, well, because I wasn't all that interested in making like children's cartoons, really. So I saw that, and I was like, oh, maybe there is kind of an avenue for me to do that for a living, make cartoons, that is. And I had a really good high school art teacher who actually went to the school that Bob and I and Cody all met in, which was School of Visual Arts. And he helped me from there get in there. And I was at first going to be an illustrator, because again, I wasn't sure how animation worked. Then I kind of changed my major, like right before I got accepted, because there was another person a year ahead of me that went to SVA, and he got me interested in it. Okay, so I got the settle here. No, nothing exciting.
Did you have some favorite comics?
Yeah, my favorite comic book was The Max. I love Sam Keith. He also did Wolverines and stuff, but I loved The Max, and this was, I might have been 13 or 12 when I have all the comic books here, actually. And comic books, you know, they took a turn after this, but like I've never really saw anything drawn the way he drew it. Like he did like this really super inky style. He did a lot of Photoshop stuff, which I wasn't even sure what was going on the comic books, and he always changed the character design a lot and just sort of used the panel to things that really interested me. And I liked the story too. It was like this psychological kind of like surreal comic book about like this homeless guy, and he has some sort of mental disease that he thinks he's in the outback. And anyone should look up Sam Keith or The Max. And they actually made a show on it on MTV with Liquid Television. That was my favorite comic book. Love Sam Keith. Super underrated. Let's see here. Yeah, I picked and I found out about the Max from a flea market. Like I just bought it when I was visiting my grandparents in Pennsylvania. It's everything pre-internet is like. It just sounds so quaint now, you know. It's just like I just found it in a bargain bin. Really aging myself. It wasn't like nowadays where like liking comics was in vogue. I never told anyone in high school I liked Dungeons and Dragons or comics. You know, just different times. Necromy, yeah, I will always use until they pull this Wacom from my hands. I'm gonna use MX. We had to do some things to get it to work on some of the newer operating systems, but it's still I'm still shocked it works. I know it's interesting, like if you open this file up in Adobe Animate, it'll still work, which is completely crazy. You know, we're talking about a 20-year gap, but they did something. They did something right here. But I'm also biased because I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm sure if I started on a different version of Flash, I would have that too. Yeah, yeah. The current anime got not my cup of tea. We actually did a series on that, comparing the two. And I won't say what side we lean towards, but the series speaks for itself. Everyone was paying attention to McFarlane. Yeah, Sam Keith was amazing. He did really cool Wolverine stuff too. Like he had a good way of drawing like those really stocky characters. Yeah, super underrated. And if you ever get a chance to read the Max or collect it, and so you just look at the cover art, and it wasn't being done when that was happening. Like he was very much innovating, like what to expect from a comic. But yeah, it was in the era of or McFarlane and stuff, and you know, he was so popular with Spawn and everything that I think he got brushed under the rug a little bit. Yeah, I think Macromedia sold it to Adobe, or they bought it. So I'm not sure what happened exactly. Though once everything got taken over, I noticed kind of a decline in the way you could draw with the brush tool. And I'm just like a brush tool purist. I want it to feel as close to marker on paper as it can. Now, it's not to say a lot of, you'll see, like if I draw like that, you'll see the line, anti-alias, and then smooth out. But it really does feel like the closest thing to almost drawing on glass a little bit. But yeah, like those China markers where it's just like kind of a slick feeling. And you know, you get accustomed to it. And this game itself has thousands of drawings, so you know, you really get kind of a knack for what the line should feel like. What's your opinion on I never used either of them. I see really cool stuff coming out of Toon Boom though. Like when I see people put something together, I'm always very impressed. I think I could be wrong about this, but the new kind of Looney Tunes, and we know some people who work on that. That's, I believe, done in Harmony or Toon Boom, and I think that looks really good. Have you seen any of them? Yeah, they
you
like.
can tell once in a while it gets a little puppety, but
Yeah, you could see some puppeting elements, but for the majority of it, it looks really good. Yeah, we have some friends that work on it, but it's funny when they show their stuff. Like they show the pre-production of it, and it actually looks like a pencil test. Like it looks like there's paper texture, and I don't even know if it's the right program, but it looks like there's like line quality to it. It's really cool.
I think they do. You have that ability to do that more.
Oh, thanks, Tommy Flavia. Thank you. Toon Boom is okay, but it's super overpriced. I do hear that too. What did you say, Bob?
Oh, I think Toon Boom has the ability to be more pencil like textures and stuff.
Yeah, I did an interview a while back, and it was a person who worked at Toon Boom, and he was showing me some stuff. And yeah, you could like control the line to look like a pencil line, and you can like alter the line too. Like so, he would take this line and like move it down, and then it would change the texture. So you could do this puppeting thing with it.
Okay, and it looked like it was.
Well, the line texture
The line,
changed every
yeah.
time you move the angle. So, if you took a line tool and this and
Yeah.
moved it up and down, it would look like a different line each time you moved the parameters. But it was like it wasn't anything like this, where it's like you had to manipulate each line. At least the way he was showing it to me. So it would be like doing one in between looked like it would take a really long time. Yes, for puppeting too, I would probably put my money on Adobe products.
Well, I mean, those rigs that they're building now, which are really pretty,
What is like something like Bluey on? Is that like
I feel like
is that Toon Boom?
Didn't they
Fine.
show it in one of those episodes where it was like actually they
They showed it in
like,
an
she was
episode?
having a dream, but they were actually just showing her being puppeted, really being puppeted in the end of it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell what they were using.
Okay. No, a lot of the new television shows are all kind of just like puppeting and like the rigs to it and all that stuff. Um, but for me, I honestly think the quickest way for myself to draw is literally just in betweening sometimes. Every time I try to set up a character, I end up doing too many layers and then I'm kind of questioning it every layer. So if I can get away with animating a character on one layer, uh, and it's a small character, I take that opportunity. When I first started in Flash, though, I was just over puppeting or just over analyzing so much stuff. Toon Boom rigging is far superior. Yeah, I believe that too. He's talking about Toon Boom being better than anyone who makes fun of anime. I love how you're getting those lines so clean. I think that's the main problem most people have with Flash brushes. Yeah, the newer Flash, I had a hard time sort of even honing in on the brush size. I was having a hard time.
Yeah, and
With
it
it.
wasn't like it was never a good number. You had to, they always wouldn't pick the numbers so much.
Well, yeah, this one you see. Again, I am a big fan of. I'm like kind of a reductionist. It's like there's 9 or 10 brushes here, right? And 9, and I know which one that is. You know, I know to use it, and that's the one I'll always use, and it just becomes second nature at that point. I don't. More options doesn't necessarily mean better. Yeah, like if you go to a nice restaurant and the menu's small, or you can go to a diner and the menu's huge, and it, depending on what you want to eat, but you know, like which one specializes in it more. Okay, so now I have these overlapping, right? All them in between. So now I'm gonna space these out by hitting F5. The last frame's the same. I'm always gonna favor the overshoot because that's the first frame you want. In this case, because the arms are coming down. So that'll be frame 1. I'm gonna grab these ones right on the bottom, click them once over, this drag and drop down. And the last 2 frames are the same because it's the last keyframe. So I'm going to just erase one. Then I can space this out. And I'll show you, I have a kind of a settle chart that I do for every kind of big move that I'm just going to grab from one of Becky's files. But you see, now we got this kind of more impactful hit. And you can see, I don't like that it's all shot on 1s though, so I'm going to kind of space those out on 2s. But you can see where it was just a static drawing before. I'm going to just single frame this, how much more impactful it is now. That's on single frame. This is on loop. Okay. So let me, I'm just going to go into one of my other files. It's so sick. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Becky, and these are all the files for the sprite work of just the main character. I'm going to the master file. I showed this on the first stream, but I'll show this again. So we foolishly went in 6 directions here. But this is all the... Now she's symmetrical, so you duplicated her, like everything to the left and right are the same. But you can see all the moves here. I'm just going to let this play out. Take a sip of my energy drink. I'm so tired of them. Finish on the stagger. Such a smart approach. Yeah, the staggers. So, like, settles and, overshoot, settle, and antic. I mean, there's really... animation's not complicated when you break down the moves into, like, the 13 basic principles. And then you just apply that to your work. And with video games, it's, you know, where it's a game like this, it's like every move has, like, the 4 principles of... you know, the idle, the ease in, ease out, the settle, which is overshoot and settle, antic, overshoot, settle, and really there's not a ton more. When we do the cinematic stuff, that's when you get to the more kind of subtle nature of, like, where it has to be a little more acting. Okay, so I'll just grab the attack. And this is the chart up top here of the settle. So I'm going to grab those frames. You can see her stick right here. Overshooting and settling. Right there. So I grab this. This is the last frame. I'm going to copy those blank keyframes here. Go back into that. Space that out here. And just follow that accordingly. That's the last frame. So we got that now. I'm just going to paste those blank keyframes up there so I know the timing too. And then he's going to shoot back in quickly. We don't want to necessarily get this guy hurt, and that's going to be another stream where Becky actually takes him and digs him out of the ground. That's what we're kind of thinking with this guy. So he's kind of a just one tier enemy. Like, he can only attack you, disappear, chase you, attack, disappear. But ultimately, I'm not sure if we're going to let Becky hit him unless he's fully out of the ground, which we won't get to today. And just click on this. Are you making... Yes, Flash MX. I have Newgrounds animation. Yeah, keep using it, please. It's the only way we animate. Moving is key. I've been wanting to be an animator as well, watching you make this. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully some of this is useful. I find myself just talking to myself, and I'm like, is anyone... Am I making any sense? I had to do the same thing to the head now. So we're going to go inside the head symbol. I'm going to grab these keyframes. Now, if you see this doesn't in between correctly, right? Because this gets wide and closes. I accounted for the puppeting nature of this, where his head's going down and then settles to that. So I wanted the jaw to overshoot, and I wanted the bottom jaw here to really feel like closed and quick. So if you go inside the head symbol, that's the thing with puppeting. Sometimes you don't get this natural kind of thing as if you were to draw it on one layer. So you always have to kind of double click and account for the stuff like that, especially when you're adding drag on like this piece of grass he has here. And I did that too with his settle here. So this one's a little different too, because this frame is just all one, right? So it starts on frame 2 actually. Have his head leaning down. So that's just reference. He's leaning down. He overshoots. This is at its highest point, but the grass is still down. I'm treating it sort of like hair. Then the grass overshoots while everything else is settling. So you kind of get that secondary motion here. Then the grass eventually overshoots and settles as well. and I still had to in between all those. But again, that's sort of like this. It's just so subtle that watching me do that might not be that interesting. But I will do the stagger for his head here. Then I'll show you how to even kind of enhance this by adding debris. He's popping out of the dirt, so I'm going to add a debris layer, and by the end we should have something resembling an attack. Always wanted to learn how to get this in order for myself. Isn't that easy? Finding info on how to start video game companies. I don't, in terms of like the business side of things, we're not good at it. Bob and I started Exit 73 Studios, not the game one, just the animation one, about 13 years ago. And we just sort of treated it like a freelance sort of thing. There's just two of us doing all the artwork, and that includes all the Exit 73 work. That's not the game, if you go to our website. And we just treated everything like freelance. We were like just two freelancers, and we decided if we're going to be a company, we could work smart and do the work of like 4 people and get paid as like 4 freelancers pretty much. And that's sort of like our business strategy, which is just, it sounds pretty boring, which is like work a lot of hours and work hard and don't get much sleep, and then you can scrimp on by like us. Oh, we reached 100 messages today. I didn't know that was a thing you could win.
Somebody said, were you talking about line weight? Were you talking about brush size or like pressure sensitivity?
When I say line weight, I usually mean the brush size. So I go to brush 8 for this. In this case, I'll zoom into 400%. You can see it at 100% now. But I do use the sensitivity too, especially with the roughs. Like, because you can get, I'm pressing real lightly here, then I'll tighten it up. And the bigger the brush, the more kind of range you have. So depending on the project, you could really get some nice line stuff. Try in betweening that, you couldn't, but you do use the pressure sensitivity. And as a general rule of thumb for this, I have a pretty firm, I press pretty firmly. I can probably lessen my firmness on it a little bit. So there will just be just very vague sort of, not vague, just very subtle line weight things here. You can see here, like the brush started there and went to its thing. But yeah, even though you kind of see this at this, not even like this level is what you should see on the television, I do believe the naked eye does pick that up. So we're going to do 6 frames again. I'm going to overshoot. Oh, did I just see lightning? Did you see that?
Oh yeah, oh god, it's starting early.
It's starting early. Okay, if we get abruptly cut off here, it's not us, it's the... Kids, after I get 100 messages, are you kidding me?
I feel that the kids' thing's gonna get completely...
Yeah, our kids have like this, we have grade school age kids, and they have family fun night tonight, and it keeps getting pushed down because of the weather here. What do gaming studios want to see in 2D portfolios? I have no idea, Joe Whimsy. The portfolios we see, I like to see a little bit of variety, but I don't know if we would be the best gauge on what like a bigger game company would want to see. Though I do feel like gaming is this new thing. Like every trailer I've watched for at least indie games now, whether it be a 3D game or a hand-drawn game or everything in between, I notice the trailers nowadays are a lot of traditional animation, and I love it. It feels like, because trailers you can really throw your back into a lot and get really cool animation. But I've noticed that a lot lately. So his jaw is going to go down and out for this one. Remember, this is the overshoot one. Sometimes I'll grab it and even squash it down a little bit more. His ears will go up. Like when you tilt your head, your ears kind of go up. The grass will go that way. this year will flow that way. There. So I'm gonna clean that up real quick. Oh, I do see lightning. Oh boy. What happened? Get it damage the computer?
Oh, why?
Yeah.
We have the surge detectors.
Oh yeah. You'll just if we go off, you'll just hear this weird beep, and then me and Bob scrambling around cursing. Long Island, New York. Yes. Pretty far out east too. I think there's a preconceived notion of Long Island, where there's two counties, Suffolk and Nassau, and we're Suffolk, the one more out east, kind of less city bound. Yeah. We might get abruptly. I can't afford to take any time off. Had to flash MX by candlelight. Whenever the lights go out, I'm like, oh, we could take some time off. But then I realize everything I want to do requires electricity. So I'm just like, oh. Any work you can show in a similar style to what the game studio is already working on, the better. There's often no... Oh, that's... Oh, okay, this is for Joe Whimsy, I'm guessing. And Joe, that is that who he's talking? Well,
Yeah.
That Tin Heart Interactive, he's the writer for the game right now. And he's worked at bigger companies than Exit 73. Though that doesn't take much. Okay, so this is going to be the undershoot, but remember his head's going up, so we're going to kind of elongate this one here. I usually start around the eyes. Just force a habit. Yeah, they're going to definitely cancel that.
Well, then it's like they're not gonna. This was the reschedule.
This was the over. It's over. No family. No fun.
Ellie got to do it today, at least, for that point.
No fun for the families. Stretching out the bottom of the jaw here. Did I add those two dots? I didn't add that little debris thing to this guy here. Let me just do that real quick. Alright, I'm going to clean this guy up now. I need to go to an apartment. Hope to have it good the rest of the stream. Alright, thanks for joining us. You could also, this also pops up on YouTube where we record everything and post it up on that. So if you miss anything, this is live on Twitch as well. You can always catch us on the YouTube one. And the hair overshoot. Hair, grass. When you make these simple characters too, you don't get bogged down in like overcomplicated line work, so you can get a lot of drawings done. And we, you know, I will always make up for like the simple characters by sometimes even over animating them. So I don't think the labor's any different. I just think we're getting a little more animation in there. Might be the school calling now. Alright, so let's in between this. I need one more for that one. Remember, there's 4 in betweens between each. That gives us the 6 and the same exact stagger on the torso. These are so close that I wouldn't even bother roughing that out. I will, thank you. Thank you very much. Alright, so we're gonna... Sometimes with this though, like when you have these all these divots and stuff, you can risk going in between the wrong kind of peak and valley. So just kind of be mindful, like if you have, sometimes we do like eyebrows like that, and if you're in between like that, always count the number of arches if you're going to do those like settles and stuff, because then you'll get that wave thing. You'll see in some animation that it looks a little rushed. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that people do feel that way about our streams and our product. And just, when we first started this, is no one's gonna watch me draw. I mean, who cares, like that. So seeing that we did get a little core audience do all this stuff, it really helps us stay motivated for our workflow. When you're working on something for as long as we have, motivation, goes down and goes up depending on what's happening. And seeing that we get some attention on Twitter or these live streams, or just people reaching out saying, good job and all that stuff, you would be surprised how much that helps the whole team. Also, it's a good way to, it's like the audience is liking what we do with this character, but maybe not this one. It's like it helps you adjust too, like when you're working on it. I'm a big proponent of showing your work as you're going on, trying to build an audience, and taking the audience on the journey with us. And and one day when this game's finished, we can look back and kind of document where we were with all these kind of live streams and posts and stuff. Because I'll tell you what, these years go fast when you're working on this, and you'll miss it when this game's finally released. There's going to be the part that I was completely anxious about and nervous about, that I know I'm going to somehow miss in a weird way, even though every morning I wake up with a pit in my stomach. Oop, let's get that one in. Some of my fondest projects before we even started the studios were the productions that were, looking back, they were hard, but like hard for good reasons. I mentioned Super Gerald earlier. When I was working at a different studio called Augenblick Studios, we did the first season of Super Jail. And anyone familiar with that show knows it's it's a ton of drawings too. And we're a really tight schedule. Like it was hard. We didn't have a lot of animators. We're a relatively small studio. And daily it was hard. Like every day was pretty tough, right? But I look back with some fondness on it. And I was like, we made something that our small team probably couldn't have or shouldn't have. It's a good feeling. Though there were days I was so burnt out. I hope to look back at Blood with those same rose-colored glasses. I think I will. But this is the most drawings we've put into something, bar none. I worked on Super Jail. I'm not the creator. I was season 1. It was 2006. We did the pilot. The pilot got picked up, and then the studio got a little bigger, and we did season 1. I was one of the writers, but there was 10 writers, and it was pretty much just us sitting around figuring out what led to the jail fight at the end of everything. It wasn't like, if you watch season 1, it wasn't very like there wasn't a lot of character dialogue, so it was really just kind of making a short film. And so we'd be like, well, what, in episode 3, how should we get to the fight at the end? Because Super Jail's format was, you start off with something mundane, and eventually it leads to this really outlandish fight. So it'd be like, what if the warden opened an aquarium, and then then the fish got, it was something like that. So writing, I was credited as a writer, but I don't know if I you know, I don't know what else you would have called it, but there's better writers than myself. But I was one of the lead animators. That was a fun project, though, for sure. I'm here across the new frontiers with my eye for the fear. That's sick. That must have been an awesome experience. Yeah, everything I worked on at that studio was a really good experience. Augenblick Studios taught me a lot. I was sort of a green animator before that. I was um, I was 4 years in or 5 years in before I worked for them as a professional animator. And then I went there and learned a ton after that. And I still use those applications today. Any advice on running an animation studio? I think the best advice I could give is keep overhead low. We're kind of past the age where it's like a client's gonna stop on by, so you need to be like, "Hey, I have this really nice office. You should hire me." We're kind of past that time, so I think overhead low, meaning you don't need to even work in like a metropolitan area. Um, if having a backlog of clients always helps for sure. And then just kind of budgeting the animation in a way that makes sense. Um, you know, they'll usually have to negotiate a price down and then know what you're capable of for that price and then sort of over deliver and under what is it, oversell and under deliver, the over deliver under, everyone knows the phrasing. I'm just stepping on my words here. But yeah, low overhead's probably the biggest secret I think I would give. Especially, you could always amp up. It's hard to kind of reverse that course if you go the opposite approach. And I like kind of short form animation stuff. And as a small studio, we have to stay short form. There's no one going to hire Exit 73 to do a series because there's only a couple of us. So, keep the projects lean and mean. And the overhead low. And having a good client helps too. You can find some bad ones out there. I'm just cleaning up this so I know where to settle. Under promise, over deliver. We'll fix that in editing. There you go. Thank you, Scott. All right. Well, it doesn't matter if you do it right. Sometimes you have to redo it again anyway. All right, let me just... Okay, so I got that settled. Let's just jump... Ooh. Oh, that's the first one of the next one. See, that's... I get in trouble here because I didn't do my layering technique here. Let me do that. There we go. Now I know what I'm doing. Alright, gonna start with the furrow of the brow again. How much exposure should an exposure? That's a good one. Yeah, you can always get paid in that. I find that's in short demand. Yeah, we're using Flash MX actually. It's a version of Adobe Animate that was made 20 or 22 years ago. So which we're showing your process. Do you guys still use Flash? Yes, we still use Flash MX. We always have as a studio actually, as Exit 73. There's certain projects where we had to coordinate with other bigger companies, so we had to use whatever program they were using. The reason is because I started animating in the industry as a professional in around 2002 or 3. And the first big project I worked on was in Flash MX, and Um, I got the job. I went in, and this again, it's sort of pre-internet. It's like early 2000s, but it's like the internet was this still very nebulous. And I was fresh out of college, looking for something to do, and I went in, and it wasn't like the job wasn't advertised as what it was. It was just like it's like if you have a portfolio, kind of show up. So, I printed out my portfolio, lugging this big thing across the city, and I go into this kind of abandoned. In hindsight, I might have not walked in nowadays. This kind of abandoned kind of building, and I showed him the client my portfolio, and it was pretty similar to his style. So he was like, "Oh, how much do you charge an hour?" I was like, "Oh gosh, I wasn't expecting to even get a job, so I was like, I don't know, $9 or $10 an hour." And he immediately was like, "You're hired." So I was like, "Oh, I definitely undersold." The guy was super cool though. The show was it was a Comedy Central show called Shorties Watching Shorties, which only lasted a season. Um, on Comedy Central, and it was pretty much they would take clips from comedians, stand-up comedians, and we'd animate them. So it would just kind of be a bit of theirs, and instead of them standing on stage, we'd actually have it realized and animated it. And it was done in Flash MX because it was sort of a cheap production, and those who remember when Flash came about, it was every animation sort of production's thought process that it was like, if you use Flash, it's got to be cheap. Like they knew, like they equated Flash with cheap. That's another story. But so he was like, we use Flash MX, and I was so nervous to lose the job. I was like, oh, I know that. I didn't. I was kind of familiar with Photoshop and After Effects after just finishing my thesis. But I knew it was readily available. So I went home, after that, and I just sort of plugged and played with Flash MX, and I wasn't proficient at it at all. But I knew I could draw on it and all that stuff. And it turns out I didn't need to learn a ton because I learned a lot on the job. And it was really just learning a few keyboard commands, which was F8, make a symbol, F7, blank keyframe, F6, add a keyframe, and F5, space out a keyframe. But there was some stuff I was doing in the beginning that was a lot of Flash sort of no-nos. Like I was puppeting groups. I didn't know how to crossfade at the time, Bob, so I would shape tween like I would shape tween green to like clear to like make it look like a crossfade. I was like, because I was so afraid I was gonna get caught. But anyway, that was my first real kind of gig, and my boss, this guy Eric Brown, super cool dude, and he saw value in me, and then he actually started paying me what he thought was fair, and I haven't found a lot of clients like that since. Like, he was super honest about it, and I worked on that for about probably like a year and a half, and it turns out that there was 2 studios working on that, and the other one was Augenblick Studios, the one that did Super Jail. I kind of they saw some of my work from the other studio, and they thought they could hire me after that job was done, and that's what happened.
My buddy Dave had a similar story where he had to know Photoshop and he didn't, and so he hid in the bathroom all day and figured he would go get a book on it later and learn Photoshop, but they let him
learn Photoshop in the day would be like...
They let him go by the end of the day. But
they fired me because he was like, you were just hiding in the bathroom? Oh my god. Yeah, listen, you have to do what you have to do sometimes. I mean, who doesn't lie on their report, who doesn't lie about anything on their resume? Like, is anyone 100% honest on their resume? Also, some jobs you need some sort of on-the-job training too. But yeah, it's just so weird how like so much has changed since then. Like I think I got that job looking on Craigslist, and it was like Craigslist might be something now, but in 2003 is like you do not want to mess around on Craigslist. It's like you're really putting your life on the line there. And like the building was so funny. It was just like off 23rd Street, and it was just like pretty much like a condo a little bit. And like he was setting up, he was just building desks in there. It's like, oh my god, what am I walking into? And no, that it's funny. It's because that really, it's like that butterfly effect though. That it's like that truly shaped where my career went. Like just that random sort of happenstance. If I didn't say like $8 an hour, like would I be here? And it's like there's some part of me that's like maybe, and there's a part that's like no, that would have affected things pretty direly. So work for $8 an hour, like we are. All right. I'm still friends with people from that job too today. We're just a lot older. I was the kid. I was like the kid on it too. You know. Have you seen the new? The one where it looks like the traditional one, like from. They're talking about the Sonic game, like the one that's sort of like the 2.5D.
Oh, the one that just came out recently.
Yeah, I thought that looked cool. I always, I was a Super Nintendo kid, but my friend Evan, the Ninja Scroll guy, he was he owned the Genesis. We played a lot of Sonic actually. I'm just grabbing the frames from this so I can chart that out right. Yep. Nope, I'm spacing that out wrong. So overshoot, yep. Drag and drop. Yeah, I thought the new one looked kind of cool. It's funny, it's like Sonic is in the news and Mortal Kombat's in the news. It's like nothing changes or something, you know? Like Mortal Kombat 1 and Sonic's out. All right. And Batman, yeah, there's that meme. There's like Batman's in the theaters, and so is what was the other two? What was the other two?
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones. Yeah. All right, so we got them like that. I also added this kind of swipe. And this kind of gives the programmers like this would be an area where Becky could technically get hit. What I'll probably do for this is I'll isolate the symbols and I'll duplicate this one and I'll add one where Becky actually gets caught on this one and I'll just do it as an overlay. So, like say Becky was here, right? She pops out. She gets too close to this guy. He pops out and grabs her. I'll probably duplicate the symbol, and this will be like if Becky gets caught, and she can, we could do something funny like, oh, kind of in a chokehold, like that. So this is one of those ones. We also, I'll show you another example of this, where like Becky's embedded in the animation of the attack. So I'll do that, follow the same exact chart, then he will bring her into the ground, pop, then, time will pass and she'll pop out of the ground and, land. So that'll sort of be kind of a hindrance to her. So anyway, what I was saying was this will sort of give the programmers some sort of indication of like the bounding box where she can get hit. So if she's over here, say, to the right, she would still end up getting caught over here, in other words. And in the context of the game, there's so much stuff going on in this game that I don't think anyone will really notice that she started here and ended here, especially with this big sort of swipe move that action line will indicate that she did get grabbed. So I mentioned earlier, not too long ago, let me open up the Banshee. Okay. So this is one where if Becky gets hit by this character, it's embedded in the character's animation, not Becky's sprites. I'm just going to show some of this stuff. Okay. Okay, so that's the case. So you think you can hit her. She takes a swipe. This Banshee sucks down into the ground. From under you, she gets grabbed in here. So Becky's part of this symbol now, which means you as a player won't have any control of her for obvious reasons. She gets slammed. Now, Becky, now you're back in control. And she turns into that. So I'll probably do something similar to this guy for this. Okay. I mentioned I was going to get to some debris stuff, so let me do that now. So this guy pops out of the ground. We're going to want kind of dirt debris to fly off him. Did I miss any questions? Ooh. So I'm going to read it. People are playing Sonic. I'm getting phone calls. All right. That's a school. All right.
It's canceled.
All right. Last week it was forest fires from Canada and now torrential dams. But it's fire and ice here. Okay. So I'm gonna. Oh. This is sort of the first frame, right? Because it goes back into this idle. So I'll kind of keep this in mind right here. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to put it on this layer right here. Isolate it off. So it pops out. I'm going to add like this trajectory of dirt here. Kind of follow the contours of him. So it's a little more graceful coming from the dirt pile. I'm going to rough this out real quick. Now when he overshoots, I'm going to have the dirt fly up and over him because I don't want it kind of staying around and I want it to disappear before it hits the ground. So kind of, and this will enhance the action of the motion of the arm too. So I'm going to do that. When I do effects work, I usually go straight ahead. To a degree, I'll skip a frame here and there. Most effects are done that way too. It's a different kind of thought process. It's a little like stop motion in that way. I'm going to keep following the arch of the arm. So this dirt over here, go that way. This one will overshoot that way. Now I kind of want it not to touch the silhouette of the guy anymore. We kind of get that it was on top of him this way. So now we're gonna so this side dirt over here, coming from center to right to back to center. Opposite over here. This will skip a few keyframes. And all the debris in this game, I just dissipate. I don't want to worry about it landing down here. That would cause all sorts of problems for a game where these guys are constantly moving. So any debris, whether it be blood, spit, or any of the other stuff, we just get rid of it before it would even hit the ground. Then you could just time it out. Yep. I told you. I told you it would be here. That was later than usual. Well, thanks. I'm glad you like the design. Okay, so gonna turn off that. Don't need that no more. All right. I can live with that. I think it looks cool. You would have to imagine this. So, forgive me, this isn't fully in between, but I'm going to show you sort of like how it might move in this. So I'm going to go to new. I copied those key. These are the 3 sprites that I'm using right now. Now some of them aren't even animated, so you'll have to use some imagination here. Save. Go to new. This is the resolution for widescreen television. You see how big these guys are here because I'm using sprite sheets that are huge. And what we do is take these, render them out, and then shrink them down so when they're in the game, they end up kind of looking like this line weight at 25%. So this is, relatively speaking, depending on where the camera is, what the guy should look like on a television at any given time. So I'm going to make this a new symbol by hitting F8. I'll call it DV Dirt Vampire animation example. Okay, so I'm going to go inside this one, make it to the desired length. So this is up and down. This isn't move. Oh, and I see a color change. Is that true? Did this color? Or maybe not. Maybe that was just the resolution. No. Okay. All right. So this sort of sits idle. Then Becky walks into the it's kind of whatever would trigger him to start chasing her. I'll do that at frame 49. Gonna swap that. That's the ending. So now this thing opens up, so you kind of know troubles are brewing. So this now we decided we were talking, Bob, the whole team actually, and I this morning, that would kind of be funny, like that Bugs Bunny thing where the mole hill or the rabbit hill can move on the ground accordingly, and we'll kind of mask anything like to make it look like it's actually moving in space with probably a debris layer of like dirt popping off to the left and right and sort of dissipating, sort of like how when Becky runs there's a smoke screen behind her to show where her feet are. So this will kind of justify that this thing's moving, and we'll obviously have to make it in places where it's not the sidewalk or a big rock or anything like that. So it comes like that. Now this is actually going to be moving, not inside the symbol, but this will be chasing her. We'll go to frame 72, and we'll go to 96, make it nice and even. Go to swap symbol again. Go to attack 1. Go to frame 1. So you see that, and then comes out, gets it, and returns back to that. And now this should loop pretty seamlessly. Bumps out. Goes in. Okay, so now I'm going to take this. We'll center that. Now, what frame did I do? 140. Let's move that to there. We'll move this guy up here. So it here. I'm gonna grab a Becky frame. This is super rough. Oh, please forgive me that it's gonna look puppety. Just a heads up. I'm gonna save this as animation example on my desktop. And this is something I'll show to the programmers and the writer as like, this was the idea I had. Can we make this work in programming? And a lot of times I won't finish this stuff because
They say no.
they say, no, you can't do that. And then I'm like, all right, I'll get back to it. We'll figure something out. But to their credit, there hasn't been much we threw their way that they said, there's no way we could do that. I remember one time, Andrew, I was like, can we do that? He's like, well, we could program anything. It's like, can we, as a team, do it? Let's figure it out. Andrew's been so great about, like, we throw him so much ideas and so many things, and he's been like, yeah, let's try to make it work. All right. Let me grab Becky. I think I grabbed her. She's at 25%. I'm going to put her here. So for 10, she walked up here, right around there. Now I'm going to move this guy down to where this is. I could put a motion guide on him here, so it's not exactly a straight line. Because maybe he'll be chasing her. So it'll kind of be like that. So that will be kind of, I mean, this is super rough, so. But like, if that guy was, you have to think this guy's going to be like, it's going to be like a run cycle here. So it'll be pulsating and you'll have little bits of dirt debris, so it's not going to look just so static. And then she gets spit back up. So I don't hate any of this right now. I still think it needs a ton of polish to make it work. Is there a question?
No.
We can do anything. Doesn't mean we should do it. Yes, Andrew's right about that too. All right. So, honestly, I'm going to have to see if this works. Like, I want to make sure this dirt hole makes sense moving around too. Because if it doesn't, we're going to have to change the kind of parameters of what this guy could do. Is it just a hole that sticks there and just kind of use it as a trapping rather than this thing that can chase you? But I can kind of see it working right now. This was the right. I want to play this so bad. It's fun because I don't get to program, like they don't let me. I don't know how to program. So there's just a case. I take large swaths at a time where I don't get to play, and I'm really like during the day I'm like just hunched over this thing and kind of just focusing on character animation. So even some of the ideas they're discussing in the background, I kind of just glaze over. So when I finally get to play it, when they make a build, there's just as much surprise as if hopefully with someone that's new. And I've played it recently, and there was a lot of stuff that I didn't even recognize was in it, and it was a lot of fun. And it's funny as someone who's working on it to still be surprised by some of the stuff that's in there. So, we're making it kind of a rule of these streams not to show any of the real big moments here. But like anything like this, I like to show our process. But there's parts in the game that, I think everyone will be pleasantly surprised with. All right. I'm okay with this so far. We might have to make it work with the antic, that thing up and down. So let's kind of hop over to that for a little bit and see if we can replace that symbol in the other one and see if it works well. Okay, so run cycles. I actually have one here, Becky. When you're doing these games where characters are moving, I'm not sure how fast they're going to be moving in accordance with the background. So as a general rule, there's a bunch of nonsense going on outside. But I try to keep the feet off the ground as much as I can. So I won't have any slow walk cycles because I just don't know how fast or slow Becky should honestly be. Hold on. That's two. Let's see. I bet we get it. Oh, and the horns are coming in. So I want the feet not to touch the ground as much as possible because the more they touch the ground, the more chance you get that it could look slidey. And anyone who's an animator and worked in these programmers have probably done a walk cycle and they panned it across and something just doesn't feel right, whether it's the feet are kind of staggering a little bit. So every run cycle I do, it's a lot in the air, a lot of hang time, quick down, quick up. So you can see here, now her feet just graze these. If this is the horizon right there. So you got 1, 2 frames are touching. And you can see what would be your heel is here. The next frame, it's here. So you would essentially be panning that way. So when you grab this, you can get a lot of kind of leniency. Bring the animation example in of what constitutes like a good pan. So I'm going to show you what I mean. These are two of the same exact run cycles. These are two different rates of speed. Neither of them look terribly wrong to me. I mean, the one on top, maybe it's a little slow. Same animation. The feet aren't touching, though. So with that principle in mind, how do we make this thing that's on the ground make it look like it's moving in space? And you're gonna do it by really exact. So that was 5 up, 2 down. So I'm gonna keep that chart. So it's not a lot of framework. So this thing's kind of so small on the screen. You're really gonna want to push this animation. Like this should really feel kind of bouncy. I added that grass there for the same reason I like that secondary stuff, so that grass will kind of be an indicator of how high this will be. You could do something subtle and it'll look great inside the symbol. Then you'll take it out and when you pan it, it'll sometimes feel just like a shimmer. And that's it, shimmer or line boil, whatever you guys call it, but it's pretty much a trace back that just keeps the line alive. So you almost want to get to the point where it looks a little ridiculous inside the symbol because and you wouldn't do this if it was sitting still. So we're gonna do that up. So we'll have the grass like up here. Kind of want to keep the eyes centered though still. And you know, animation's a lot about volume. Like you want to keep the volume of the dirt, so you don't want the dirt to stay on these sides. You want it to kind of suck in a little bit. All right. So that'll hopefully, you know, it might not even be enough. I'm gonna try this one though. And let's fail together. If it doesn't, I'll blame myself, I guess, for the fact that I'm trying to speed through this. All right. So we're gonna do the opposite here. I'm sorry, I already messed up. It starts up, goes down, starts up. So we're gonna just change the framework here because remember we want to kind of float in the air, pop down, pop up. Regardless, I had to clean up the keyframe, so that's what I'm going to do. Zoom into 400. Keep the eyes. Now, it doesn't matter how far I go with these lines because it's going to be black behind there. We don't touch that beast, you die. Just kidding. Well, we will. Maybe we'll get into a stream with how you could injure this guy. I kind of glazed over it earlier, but Becky gets a certain amount of tools in the game, and we want to make every tool as useful as we can. And even though you know, in this case it's a shovel, it's primarily used for digging, and there's dig portals and stuff like that. But we would like a reason to actually use this tool and engage in combat with it. So we'll show you that in a different stream. This is just kind of setting up the monster the way. To get a prototype though. All right, so that pops back up. So this will be that. So we're gonna float up in the air, remember that. So we're gonna really favor the top keyframe here. Not an exact in between here. This would be an exact one. You don't really want that. You almost wanna just kind of graze the line of the top one here. Just get it as floaty as you can. then we can do some fun stuff with the eyes. Like if you that ball exercise every animator has done, where the ball's up here, it lands down here, and the middle one can be that stretch frame, so you can really kind of play with the contour of the eyes here. Change the volume. Okay, so the grass is staying up here. We're gonna kind of favor it this way. And on the way back, we'll favor it the other way. Okay, so just hugging the line here. I forgot a dot here. Oh, forgot those dots too. Little debris kill me every time. Okay, and I think, you know, this feels good so far, so I'm gonna continue. Alright, so this is an ease out, so I'm gonna just, this I can naturally in between, just right in between the two lines here. Get that going. Ooh. All right. Make sure you get all that little detail. A lot of the times you'll glaze over it, especially when you zoom in this much, you'll miss lines all the time. On certain in-betweens when it's like that big, and if it's like an action scene, you don't need to worry about it, but for sprite work, when it's all sort of registered, you're going to want to go back and do that for sure. Yeah, well, someone's mentioning Cuphead in the chat. It was funny when, Cuphead did something very interesting that was, when I mentioned earlier, it's like, we can make it any style, and it just seems so sort of obvious that you could, but before anyone done it, who's to say? And Cuphead came out, and I was like, we draw some parallels as being a traditionally animated game, and it's a genre, and kind of taking their spin on that genre. And it dawned on me again. I was like, oh yeah, it's like they are animating something that's essentially kind of Contra-ish, but they're doing it in a very interesting way. And boy, did that resonate with audiences. So it was, when did that come out? It's a while ago. 7 years ago or so. So 7 years ago that came out, and it dawned on us. So I was like, oh man, it's like, because 1930s animation, there's just like, all our friends like it. We are friends with a bunch of like animation nerds, though. It's like, I didn't, but my kids like it too, and it's it was sort of this thing that hit the zeitgeist just perfectly. I was like, they did something brilliant there. And what's nice about like that kind of 1930s animation is just like, it's like, it's like easy to parody almost. Like you can, almost instantly the genre by, the white gloves or like the anthropomorphic characters and all that stuff. I just didn't realize so many people were like savvy to it almost. Because, we had history of animation. We knew all that stuff, but... yeah, I played that game a lot. Good game. So this is the bounce up, so we're gonna just pop off the ground, sort of. I forget another dot here. Yep. Oh no. Yeah, I can't say I've beat the game in its entirety. I could never beat the casino level in it, but I did beat the DLC. And you see, I had the secondary on the grass there, so hopefully that gives it a little more bounce, a little more height, so we can actually see it on the screen when it's at 25% end panning. It's also kind of important when you're doing these kind of pan things, like when you know the character is going to be moving across the background. A lot of our idols have 2s and 1s. You know, the settles are on 2s, like when the character is not moving. But I find if you pan these characters, you're going to want to keep everything on 1s, because it'll kind of be jarring against the pan if the legs aren't moving, but the character is. So that's a little bit of a rule with them. You'll notice it in like shows, like even like kind of modern Fox shows, like Family Guy even does a thing when they're panning across the like the living room or something. They'll all of a sudden shoot the animation on 1s. All right, let's see if this feels like anything when we put it in the other file. I'm going to color it first. If this works, I'll add a debris layer. I'll show you how I handle that too. Got the red eyes here. Okay. Yeah, that DLC though for Cuphead, just gorgeous animation. I couldn't believe how good some of that stuff looked. Beautiful. All right, so that's. I think that'll feel like something. Like, yeah, even if it feels like it's hopping, I'm okay with it. I just don't want it to. You know, it's a weird thing we're trying to pull off here, where this hole is actually moving. You know, by its very nature, there should be a path behind it, but we're gonna have to not do that, obviously. Animation example. Gonna get rid of these Becky's. Now, since this is the same file with the same file names, I could just hit that and hit replace. Take off the guide. I'd probably change the speed a little bit. That's pretty decent. If I don't love it, like say I don't love the speed, like it feels too fast or too slow, that's when I'd go in and adjust the keyframes. I'd kind of have to see it in gameplay though, because if he's moving fast, we'll keep it this way. If he's like kind of slow and kind of creeping up on her, we'll have to change that. That's something that could easily be adjusted, and we'll literally only have to change one thing of sprite work. Alright, so debris. Debris is outside the symbol. And for the... I'm just doing this in the animation example, so we're going to change the line weights here, and then I'll go into the sprite work sample and change the size accordingly. So every time it goes down, when it hits the ground, I'll treat that like a footstep. I'll have some dirt pop off. Like that. So I'm just gonna, I rough that out, I'm just gonna make that a symbol real quick. I'll call it dirt debris. Oh, 1. It is on Steam, yes. Bob will get up the Steam wish list shortly, because if you guys want to support this game in any way, that is a great way for us to kind of indicate that we're on the right path here. And yeah, it'll also keep you alerted when we can actually release more information on the game. All right, so I'm going to zoom in, even though this isn't the right line weight, but I'm just going to try to match this. This at 1600%. All right. Okay. Now, effect works I always sort of do on straight ahead. I always, when something's shooting off a character, you want to keep in mind where the horizon is. And even though it's a top-down game, we couldn't have this falling down here. It just wouldn't make sense. It would look jarring. So we had to keep in mind this is where, if it ever hits the ground, has to be on that horizon line. So I'm going to keep that there, just as reference. I'm just going to rough out something quick. Like the other dirt debris, I'm going to like dissipate it. And I'm going to keep the arch of it sort of like it rolls over here. And then we could add a little bit more as it goes. And it's going to keep that arch. So kind of keep in mind that. Now debris, let me keep the horizon there. When you do these arches, it's going to kind of float up, sort of like the run cycle. It's going to float up, then kind of quickly come crashing down. So you can kind of keep that floaty feel again. I don't want it to hit the ground, though. I just kind of want it to disappear. Say I like that timing. I can live with that timing. I'm going to keep that for the sake of argument now. Gonna go ahead and clean this up. I always shoot on ones in the beginning of effect work like this. You can dissipate on twos though, and even though it's not following the chart of the guy, this is staying in place. This debris kind of gets triggered at a certain point. It doesn't pan with the character, so I'm okay with it ending on twos. That, and then you can in between that. So that's when I say animating straight ahead in effects. This is, I time it out straight ahead, and then I go back and fix anything I might see there. All right, let me clean up that one. I'm going to hit save because I think I hear thunder. This is a first for the streams, though. Yes. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm going to animate a few more in-betweens here. It kind of breaking off a little bit there. Each one of these pieces are turning into the smaller counterpart on the other side. And the last ones, we should actually keep it on 13 frames. Oh, it dies on 13, okay. Alright, let's color that. I could get rid of the horizon now. This game looks like nobody saves the world. I played the demo. I don't know what nobody saves the world is. I could tell you our inspiration, though. We're kind of inspired by, like, the golden age of Zelda's. I call it the golden age. Everyone's playing the new one now. Probably think this one is. But Link to the Past. You know, I've recently played the very first Zelda. You know, the 1986 version. It holds up, man. That's still really good. Yeah, I couldn't like. Yeah, well, I can go on about that forever. But that kind of like when I first played that game. It was, I first got my Super Nintendo, you know, it just came out. There was nothing, I've never seen anything quite as cool as that. It was like the type of genre I liked. I like the theme of it. I like that kind of medieval stuff. Again, I was kind of a Dungeon and Dragons nerd kind of kid, and I just remember playing on it, and it really took me somewhere. Like I play it now, and it's just funny what happens with the mind. But I just remember it being so colorful and so beautiful. It still holds up that way. So we're inspired by that kind of gameplay and kind of sense of adventure. And the cartoons we're kind of mixing is that kind of late 90s, early 2000s Cartoon Network stuff. Dexter, Powerpuff Girls, all the kind of silver age of animation, as they call it now. To me, it was awesome though. It's like that. It's like that post UPA, and UPA is sort of an animation style from the 50s. Just that post UPA stuff where they were really focusing on design and just making things look really cool. They didn't have Flash then. They were drawing everything on cell. So I'm going to hit this play once. Now this is something they'll have to program in somehow. I'm just going to take this right now and show how I do it in Flash and give them an example of what I would think this could look like. So I hit play once, right? So the debris will only play once right there. And you're just going to copy the frames. Every time it's down, I'm going to paste it. I'll do the opposite on this side. Just kind of eyeball where the debris would go. And we can even probably go lower and behind. So we can actually go behind him, I think, here. Same with that one. Then hopefully with any, then it kind of looks like he's trucking through some stuff here. Okay, another frame of 7. And this is unfortunate. I just sort of had to eyeball this one. There's no science to this because I did it on a curve. Opposite. And if I really wanted to go crazy, you can like keyframe this out so he like actually chugs a little bit. Oh, I missed one. There we go. Then you could do something like this where you could copy these frames, right? I'll copy this and just paste it accordingly. And then just line it up right. And that should be the last frame where, yep. So we don't even need that last one. So if you, like I said, you want to go nuts with it, you could go, you keyframe out the timing of it. So it's like down one, up one, down one, up, down, up. And then you do -100, +100 for this, and it'll feel like he's like kind of like bouncing up and down a little bit differently. Which I don't know if we can even get necessarily that timing in the game, though the programmers did a really good job of having Becky have some like gravity to her run. Okay. Then I'll go -100, +100. I'm just going to go -100 through all of them first, and then switch off. +100, +100, 100, 100, 100, and then you see you get that kind of a little more weight to it. They did that, you accompany that with some sort of sound, all of a sudden it feels like you're playing a cartoon. All right, well that times that out pretty well. Did we put the stuff on there, or like social stuff?
We pulled that up at the end, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we're coming to a close now. Thanks for joining all of us, and thanks for asking all these great questions. And I'm glad you guys are getting something out of this for sure. You can find the Steam list somewhere in this chat. There you go. One more time. If you haven't signed up yet, please do. We're also on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all the ones where you find all of us indie game creators. I really appreciate you stopping by. We'll be here next Friday, and maybe I'll continue this guy, show you what we do when we get him out of the ground, or maybe we'll get another villain in there. We'll see how where the week takes me. All right, I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and thanks so much for doing all this, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care, guys.